Okay, let's take a look at the game of Blackbeard. This is the old Avalon Hill version of it. Apparently, well, my rules say it's second edition. So, there was apparently an original edition. This, probably they tried to mess up the rules more with. There's a later edition that's by GMT that's a completely reworked game. Alright, let's talk about this one because it's got some really kind of interesting mechanisms going on in it. And it's got a kind of play that I've not seen in anything else. Now, how well I like it or whatever, it's a tough game for me to get around to soloing, even though it's got a pure solo set of rules for it where you use Captain Blood, who is the best of the pirates, even if he's fictional. Okay. Now let's take a look at what you have to begin with. You have a map, lots and lots of charts on the map, covers the Caribbean in general and the Atlantic coast of the United States. And then an extension for the Indian Ocean and the Gold Coast of Africa. And what you'll see is that you can go from here to the Gold Coast, then over to the Indian Ocean. You don't see a lot of transferring going on in that. Talk a little bit about how the game actually plays. I tried skimming the rules, but you know, that just doesn't work for me, so I'm afraid you're going to have to suffer through my usual, I haven't played this in a long time, I don't remember too much. I'll try to cover most of it. Got a bunch of things, little ship counters to cover the pirate ships. You got merchants, warships, these number counters, which are really kind of clever. They'll be used as digits, essentially. There's other games that have used this. Republic of Rome, Kremlin comes to mind. I think Kremlin's probably the first of them that use this. But it's a really neat little idea and a way to cover a lot of information with few counters. Let's see what else we got here. Some little markers to keep track of each pirate's crew on rest by name. No, probably an overuse of counters for all of this, but there are some difficulties which require that. Some informational stuff, letters of marque, governors, marks to indicate who you've attacked. But for the most part, you're going to be playing off of a ship card. And you're going to have a ship, and you're going to have a pirate assigned to that ship. And your goal is essentially one of a couple of things. One is to get a very high notoriety, which can just win you the game if you become famous enough. The other is to retire with your pirate and have the most cash out of all the pirates who retired successfully, the people who kind of won the game historically. Going to be using 6-sided dice for this. Let me grab a couple because I'm probably going to need them. I don't trust these, but well, we'll use them. Alright. And let's see what we got here. Okay, so the goal to win is to get to 100 notoriety, and you're going to get that by capturing ships, but also by burning and capturing towns and raiding them, burning them down, and stuff along that line. Defeating warships, I think, gives you notoriety. Defeating King's Commissioners definitely does. Well, warships you can't defeat. Let's see what else we have here. At the beginning of the game, you're going to pull a bunch of merchants and set them up on the field. And then the players, in turn, are going to kind of get to start new pirates. That's one of the actions you can take in a turn. Your particular pirate has a number of ratings ability, which is going to be a combination of combat and sailing ability, etc. Cruelty, which affects how well he tortures people. Leadership, which is very important. It affects how well you can handle your crew when things start going badly, which they certainly will. Cunning gives you diary rolls, and you have this cunning last use. Whoever used cunning the last time can't use it again. He has to wait until another player uses it. And then dual rating, in case you get into a fight with another pirate, and endurance is how many hit points of damage you can take in those fights. For the ships, they have a number of holds, which they can hold treasure from a merchant ship on. You have room to keep your notoriety. You also have room to keep your net worth, which is money that you've converted from the holds into your own private stash of cash. And you have the speed and combat marker ratings, which will be tracked with these little markers just to indicate I've got this much speed, I've got this much combat. There are different kinds of ships in the game. At the beginning, you have to choose between a sloop, yeah, not that, and a schooner. A schooner is slightly more maneuverable and a little worse in combat. Basic advantage it has is this coastal evasion, which is going to allow you to evade an enemy warship, for example, if you're in a coastal area, which is the pale blue areas. On the other hand, you do have slightly less combat. And then there's things you can capture, like a big old three-masted square rigger, which is an iffy choice. Huge, huge combat rating, but it's slow, and speed is really important in this game comparatively. Things like the brigantine, which aren't all that slow. What do we have on the back? The schooner. I think that's all we got. Alright. So, on the turn, basically what you do is you're going to be, well, to begin with, you roll dice to see who's which player in order. None of this really matters. One player's player 1, I'm going to be playing a 4-player game, one player's player 2. That's just a tag to remind you, because the way your turns are going to be discovered is you flip this over, and depending on the number of players in the game, so if it's a 4-player game, whichever skull is dark indicates that that player gets to go. So on this card it would be player 2 in a 2-player game, 3 in a 3-player game, etc. But different cards are going to have different distributions of these. Okay. So in the action phase, what you're going to be doing is you're going to flip over a card and see who gets to do something. Now this is very weird because it means that you can't really judge who gets to make a move at any given time. This can be important because the King's Commissioners are also controlled by the players, and they're hunting pirates. And it means if somebody gets a number of turns, they can activate their King's Commissioners and hunt down a player who's doing well, make it harder for them to survive the game. Now, throughout the game, you're going to be allowed up to 3 pirates. Once you get 3 pirates killed, you're knocked out of the game. Now, on the first operation in the game, you must bring a pirate into play. You must activate one, and you put it in a hex of your choice. You get to choose whether you want a schooner or a sloop to begin the game with. Got one of each here. And like I said, they have very similar, to tell you the truth. The only difference is that evasion rating and the combat rating. Okay. Sometimes the action line will say draw random event in place. I am not seeing one. Yeah, there's an event. I'm looking for one. For example, this one, I'll say draw a random event, and then you'll draw another card and read what the event is and take that into play. Others have certain special things like Warship intercepts most notorious pirate, and that will just happen. That's sort of a special effect that takes play. There's always a risk. That's sort of the catch-up mechanism in the game. Whoever's the most notorious attracts more attention because of that. Let's see what else we got here. Okay, during your player turn, you're going to have 3 options, essentially, and you can only do one of them. You can activate a pirate. You must do this if you have no pirate in play in order to put a new one on the board, as you do at the beginning of the game. You can do a pirate operation with a pirate, and we'll go through what those are. Essentially, I don't see how that's different from activating a pirate. Oh, activating is just starting a new one. Gotcha. Performing a pirate activation, or you can perform an operation with one of your King's Commissioners. Now, usually you will not use your King's Commissioners unless they're in a situation where they have a good chance of hunting down a pirate who you really want to knock out of the game, because maybe he's well ahead for that player. The different operations you have with the pirates is to move. And when you move, you're allowed to do an attack. You're allowed to search for a merchant ship if you see one. And then you can attempt to take it as a prize. You could start a new pirate, which is that ability up there. You could sell booty if you're in a port. And whenever you sell booty or capture booty, you're allowed to do a DNR, debauchery and revelry. One of the pities of this, playing it solo, one of the few things that was fun about this game was DNRing all over someone's ass. But that kind of loses its fun value of threatening to do when you're playing it solitaire. Ransoming a passenger, that's kind of like selling booty. It's something you do in port to get, if you've captured a valuable passenger you can get cash from. Refitting ship is going to be your repair rules. You could assault or sack a port. Those are kind of rare things. Recovery in the port, that's going to help, again, fixing your ship in a sense. You're allowed to retire. And you can also careen a ship, which is going to improve your speed instead of just your combat value. Recovering in the port, I think, helps your wounds. It may help your crew on rest as well. There's a bunch of stuff in here, a bunch of little tracks that you have to kind of keep in balance between, hey, you know, I want to have these as good as possible, things like speed and combat. But there's also this unrest table, and there's a whole list of all the different things that affect that here. So, for example, you get a big bonus for attacking successfully, but you get penalties for failures, and you get penalties for bad events that take place against you. For example, if your pirate is injured. All right. So for movement, what you're going to be doing is you roll a die, if that's what you choose to do, and most of this is going to be that, and then you add your speed modifier, and that's how far you move. If you move your full speed, that's possible, you're allowed to do a search. Doing a search means flipping one of these cards over and looking for the search, and it'll tell you whether or not you find merchants in the hex that you ended your movement in. And if you do, you simply draw them from the chart. It's also possible that merchants are going to show up randomly, and some of them start the game that way on those little ship markers. You might also find warships by searching. You might find a storm by searching. Now, King's Commissioners don't use a die roll for movement. In fact, they have potentially very low movement allowances. I think the fastest ones have a movement allowance of 5, and they're not terribly powerful in combat. And the slowest ones have a movement allowance of 2, and that's also reflected on the counters here. We're trying to make everybody dizzy to indicate how far they can move. So if you choose to move a King's Commissioner, you just move those spaces. That's not a plus to a die roll for movement. When you enter a hex with a King's Commissioner or a warship at sea, there's a possibility that you're intercepted. If the modified die roll is greater than the die roll of the King's Commissioner, you get to avoid the battle. Okay? So this is not just the coastal evasion. Coastal evasion is something different. You get this chance to evade enemies anyhow, just when you're moving in the area. But sometimes there's automatic interception from random events, etc. In which case, then your only way out is the coastal evasion. You get the coastal evasion even if you're intercepted, though. It's just this special ability that the schooners have. All right. When you search or land on a merchant ship, you get to kind of peek at it. And then you can decide, and these rules are terribly organized, trust me. Then you get to decide whether or not you want to attack it. If you choose not to attack it, I believe there's a crew unrest modifier for that. I don't want to, I can't get that kind of resolution in there, and you can't really read it from here. And I don't want to zoom in on it by walking over to it. I'm tired. If you attempt to take the prize, yeah, you peek at it, and if you want to attack it, well, I'm going to need to, and you've never attacked that country's ships before, you take a counter to mark and put it on your ship to indicate that you have attacked, say, in this case, the Dutch. And now, Dutch warships will not like you. If you capture a ship, in certain cases the silhouette on the merchant ship matches a type of ship. For example, this I believe is a three-master. And the way you look, you got to look at the two pictures, and you see that they're indeed the same. Something is very small. This is the Brigantine, I think. No, that's another three-master. Yeah, these are the ones. These are. I don't think these are not schooners, and they are not sloops either. No, that may be a sloop. I don't know. Anyway, if you end up capturing a ship of the right type, you may take it as your own ship. Now, how do you get that? You have to, oh geez. You have to roll doubles and take no damage when attacking in order to get that. The way the combat's actually resolved is each of these merchant ships has a number, which is its combat ability, and this is probably nothing. Yeah, this is one of the ones you can't capture, I think. Yeah, that looks kind of like that, so I think you can. I don't know. I know there's a type, and I always look at it and think you can capture it, but you can't. And it's always got a small, tiny number. Anyway, what you'll be doing is you subtract the defense rating, the 2 in this case, from your combat number, which is part of, well, from your attack number. Now, your attack number is defined somewhere or another. It's going to be a mixture of your ability and your combat rating at that given time, and maybe speed too. Yeah, speed, ability, and combat value add together against a merchant. Against warships, it's just going to be your combat value and your ability, because you're not chasing them down to fight. They're willing to fight you. You can't capture a warship or a KC, though. So your goal here is to get a success, but somewhere or another it tells you how you get hits. You make a die roll. If you roll less than your attack number, you've captured the merchant. It's removed from the board. If it's within 1 or 2 of the attack number, you take hits equal to that amount. But then the merchant can be attacked again, and that's going to affect your cruelty when you capture your cruelty affects I don't know, something. Maybe your torture capability or something. I don't remember. If you attack one that's hit you already. If you roll 3 or more greater than the attack number, though, you end up, instead of taking damage or capturing it, it just runs away. You've scared it. Now, once you capture something, you're going to be drawing on here on the cargo manifest. Compare the number of hit points that the merchant ship had to where you found it, and that'll give how much value that ship has. Now, when you capture that ship, you get to put its treasure in your hold. So, for example, if I capture something that has 65 treasure, I could put 65 treasure in one hold. Alternatively, I could get 2,000 treasure, and that would fill one hold. So the more holds you have, the more you can carry of these treasures, but it's not based on the amount of value that the holds hold. So even if you capture a three rigger and it's got, you know, a huge amount of money in it, it still only fills one of your holds in your little tiny sloop. A little weird there. After you check that, what else do you check? You check to see if you have hostages, and that's by flipping this over, another card, to see this number. And if that number plus the merchant's defense plus the modifier for the current ocean, which is, over here, these numbers running across here, this plays a lot easier than it explains. It's all a very procedural thing. As you follow it, it becomes almost second nature, but really explaining the rules and then the first few turns of it are just a pain in the ass. Okay, so if that number plus the merchant's defense plus the modifier is greater than or equal to 10, then you have a passenger and you get 5 notoriety for taking him hostage. You get notoriety for capturing the ship to begin with, which I think is like double. Yeah, that's the bonus. If you've injured yourself on a ship, you get like double your notoriety. So the notoriety you get for capturing a ship is, I believe, equal to your cruelty, which means the more, you know, the crueler you are, the more victory points you sort of get throughout the game by making a name for yourself. But you get 5 extra for capturing a hostage, and then if you capture the hostage, you have to determine where he comes from, and you draw yet another card. And you use the number there, I think. I don't know. No, you look for the HP against the ocean that it's in, and that'll tell you the port that he comes from. Now, those are all allocated by the oceans that they're near. So, for example, in the North Atlantic, a 21, that's going to put you somewhere near the North Atlantic there. Once you capture, you can choose to torture the hostage in order to amuse your crew, and that'll bonus your crew unrest, and it could possibly give you information towards attacking the guy's home port, which will give you a bonus if you ever attack it. And you roll a die. If you roll less than your cruelty rating, the hostage dies. If you roll the questioning process. If you roll less than or equal to your cruelty rating, you get information. If you roll less than your cruelty, you kill the hostage. Now, what's bad about killing a hostage is that you can't ransom him off once he's dead. They don't want him anymore. On the other hand, having a high cruelty means that you're liable to get information if you torture him. Having a very low cruelty means that you're liable to keep the passenger alive after getting information from him, which is kind of nice if you get information. Your chance of getting information goes down, though. Once you take a prize, you can DNR, and what that does is that improves your crew rating another step, but it makes your ship somewhat more at risk to attacks. And we're going to try to get through this as quickly as possible because I know I can't touch it all on here. We talked about booty. The thing is, once you got your booty, you can sail it to a port and you can sell it at that port. If the port you sell it at is a pirate haven, you only get 80% of the value of the booty. Otherwise, you get the full cash. When you get the full cash, you get notoriety based on that cash. You also improve your unrest, and you get another opportunity to DNR there. If you sell at a pirate haven, you must DNR. Now, if you DNR and there's someone else there, another pirate, you have to have a duel with them. And that handles a very simple combat rules. Basically, this is an attack and defense rating for the duels, and then an endurance there seldom comes up into play. Here's the different things that'll change notoriety, and this is all actually nicely placed on the board, but you get it for capturing prizes based on your cruelty, you get it for the hostages, you get it for sacking ports, you get it for winning, well, escaping a battle with a warship or a KC. Sinking the KC gives you some, you gain it for a duel. Once your crew unrest starts getting low, you have to worry about mutinies. These are the modifiers to it. Oh, I gotta find where you get a mutiny. Crew unrest random events can cause a mutiny to occur. The player who draws the card. Now, the person who draws a card is the person who last took a turn. I gotta pause this here. Okay. Somewhere or another, I think it's possible to get injured through one of these. Yeah, whenever you take damage, there's some possibility of injury. I don't know where that is. Okay, on to King's Commissioners. So there's a lot of rules on King's Commissioners, and to tell you the truth, you very seldom are really playing too much with them. Because when you activate a King's Commissioner, he usually can't go fast enough to catch anyone. And when it comes down to being able to evade him on an interception, the King's Commissioner is fairly easy to evade. So in general, players don't take actions by choice for a King's Commissioner, although they sometimes will. However, it is possible that you get one of these KC cards, which means that a King's Commissioner gets activated through random event, essentially. You can also petition for one if you wish. They get drawn at random. And, let's see. Shit, I don't remember. God. I hate these rules. They're activated through petitions or random events, 17K. Let's take a look at how that is. So 17K, that's going to be a KC activated random event, which just activates one against somebody who has... it goes after the most notorious pirate. But when the KC is up there on the card like it is here, I don't remember if that's... The KC is on the 3-player line. It's ignored except in the solitaire game. Great. Okay. Yeah. That's how to... It's a part of the solitaire game to determine if the KCs will hunt you down. So you don't get a random KC that way. The event may tell you how this happens, but for the most part, players don't actually use them. When they do, they are usually most useful when a pirate's in a port and you oust them into a battle. You can move the KC into the port to push the pirate out, and if there's a blockading KC or warship there, and the warship can also oust the pirate in that condition, it causes a battle. Now, under this, I think they give the combat for both KCs. And no, KCs have a different kind of battle situation than regular warships do. Whoever rolls the higher gets to decide whether to continue longer. Basically, you roll based on here the KC, the warship. You take your combat strength plus your ability, and you both roll two dice. And the KC, for example, will have their own combat strength that they track here, as well as their own speed, which is related to that. As they take damage, both get hit, and then trying to remember what happens. I don't know. The difference in the die roll is how much damage the person who loses the die roll takes. The winner is going to take a round of damage. Now, if this is an actual warship, it takes no damage. So I'm right, that is the same combat situation. But for some reason, this is all under the KC rules. The pirate's allowed to surrender, trusting to a letter of marque, which, if he has the right nation, might work. If he wins, he gets notoriety from it. The damage he takes is marked along. He's immune to mutiny during the battle itself, but once free of the battle, if his unrest drops down to 0, that's when you get a possible mutiny. And when you make a mutiny check, what you're doing is you make a roll based on your leadership. 1 die. If you roll less than your leadership, you survive and your unrest jumps back up to 6. That happens anytime your mutiny value gets reached. Now we go to injury. Now this is how great these rules are, right? The injury rules here cover any damage to the ship. Now this is covered still under the King's Commissioner rules. There's other forms of combat going on with warships in this game. There's other ways you could take damage to your ship, but no, they decided to bury this in a rule here for all the combat damage in this little section. And basically each point of damage you take makes you make a die roll to see if you take an injury. If you roll badly, you take some markers that'll give you lasting effects to that. You can use recovery operations to get those wounds back. And let's see, combat damage causes, for any cause except scurvy, causes crew unrest. Yeah, it's all very randomly assigned. You can tell this must be a Greenwood job on this thing. I mean, he did most of them, but usually his fingerprints are all over the very worst rule books. Yep, got him right there with some guy named Jim Eliasson. And you got that big Berg name there, but Berg's rules are never organized in this kind of chaos. Alright, so warships themselves, they can be triggered by, well, these move or draw warships, warship intercepts, most notorious pirates, stuff like that. And they will come into existence that way, or move towards the nearest pirate and try to catch him. They can also go into a port if the ports are the same nationality of the warship and oust the pirate, and that can cause some damage to the ship that's there in terms of crew unrest, I guess. KCs are, under warships, we have the anti-pirate campaign, which is special rules only applying to KCs. Okay? KCs can enter a pirate haven if the pirate haven is occupied and another KC or British warship is blockading that hex. Of course, the blockading, which can also be done by KCs, is handled under warships. All very random here. If you succeed in doing this kind of situation, you actually capture the pirate haven and turn it into a British port of limited value. Now you can also attack ports. This is a very painful, a high-risk maneuver. The way this is going to be done is let's see. You add your ability to your ship's combat strength plus a single die. You can use 2 dice if you have information from a hostage. And then you compare this to the port's defense value, which is one of these 2 numbers. Let's flip back here. Port value is the first number. The garrison is, I think, the defense value. But I'm not sure because, you know, they decided not to name them by the things that they use in the rules. I'm guessing the garrison is the port defense value because the port value has other factors in the game. Alright. So what do you do here? If you end up rolling less than the port's total, your attack failed, and the pirate takes damage equal to the difference, I think. And if your ship's not sunk outright, it's ousted and takes an additional point of damage. The pirate then can't attack that port again until his ship is fully refitted. However, if the port wins, the raid is successful, the pirate stays anchored there and takes damage equal to one less than the lowest die roll made by the port. He gets a nationality marker as though he's attacked it if he hasn't gotten one already. And by raiding the port, he rolls dice equal to the value of the port multiplied by 100, and that's going to be the amount of booty, but it fills all the holds. Which means if you're already carrying something, you have to reduce the booty that you take from the port that way. Otherwise, you're just covering the whole, all your holds with that value. And you have no room for any more money. After a successful raid, the port is marked with a number marker showing that its value is one less, which means if it's raided later, it'll have less value. And then if you spend the next turn anchored in that port, you must sack it by attacking again to defeat the port's reinforcements. This time you do not get an extra die roll for reinforcements, but the port only gets half its defense rating to its 2 dice. At that point, you can put a port destroyed marker, and you get notoriety equal to twice the port's defense rating, plus +3 to your status on the crew unrest table. And a destroyed port cannot be used again during the game. You get a little marker that shows that it's burned. And again, that's mainly to get some notoriety there. Alright, when you do refit operations, if you're in a safe haven or pirate haven, you recover the entire ship, all the damage to the ship. Any other refit operation, in a neutral port for example, you get 1 point of damage back. If you're in a pro-pirate port, you get 2 points back. Now, pro-pirate and anti-pirate is based on these governor chits, and sometimes you'll be told to draw a governor. I think some of them start the game on the board at random. Commissioners can repair damage by refitting at any neutral or anti-pirate port, and they get 1 point of damage back. 2 points at an anti-pirate. Careening, as long as you're in a coastal hex, you get to declare that you're careening, and there's a little marker for that. It weakens you in combat if you're attacked that way because you have the boat up on the beach and you're scraping the barnacles off. And you roll a die, and that's how much speed damage that you remove from it. Okay. It's a bunch of random events. They come up based on the cards. They have their specific effects. Most of them are pretty random, and we'll leave them alone. Storms at sea, for example, stuff like that. Your goal here is presumably one of two things. To get to that 100 notoriety. But the other thing is to retire with the most money. Usually the game ends because all the other players have lost all their pirates, to tell you the truth. It's not an easy job being a pirate. But if you like, you can try to retire. This can happen either automatically through a mutiny, through a king's pardon, or voluntarily by presenting a letter of marque. Now, some of these, like a mutiny, you don't get any cash. So unless you stowed money away, and there's a way to do that somewhere or another, I don't remember where. Yeah, you can stash it in a safe haven. Safe havens are something that you buy through a random event, essentially, I believe. So when you try to retire with a letter of marque when you're captured in battle, you forfeit everything you have on the field if you haven't got it into net worth yet. There's also a chance that net worth that you have racked up here and not hidden in a safe haven can go away. And you make a die roll on here, and you'll see what happens. You could end up just being executed. Now, I also vaguely alluded to fighting of duels. I don't want to go too much into them. They're basically die rolls using these attack and defense numbers and endurance for a number of hits. You can run away from a duel after rounds. Pirates can make agreements to attack a prize together. They can also, I guess, work together to defend or to attack a port. They can sell or trade booty hostages or other stuff to one another. Set of solitaire rules here. Already kind of explained the cunning thing. When a king's peace happens, all your cunning comes back, which is one reason to use that as you play. And of course they probably buried some rules in the questions and answers section, at least clarifications that should have been just written the rules properly in the first place. Alright, well, I know that's not very clear, and to tell you the truth, there's very little way of explaining this game if you haven't played it recently. It's very difficult to capture what the game's about and how it works. And even if you have been playing it recently, usually you forget about half of the rules in here because they never come into play in the game. So I hope that gives you kind of an idea of where they go, but largely, like things like Republic of Rome, when you run into stuff, you've just got to look it up and spend your 15 minutes trying to decipher the rules at that point to see what happens. You'll see in the playthrough that it actually plays a lot smoother than that, I hope. Alright, let's send this up.